Hi, my name is Natalie Birinyi. I'm an artist based out of Brooklyn, New York, currently in my quarantine makeshift home studio. I came to the Spruce in Indiana County last August for a month and had just the best time. I loved the people, I loved the town, I loved the vegetarian surprise at Josephine's, I loved taking my dog to White Woods. We just had such a blast and I felt so lucky to be part of the Spruce. So I'm really excited today to show you how to do something which I love to do, which is make books. I'm a painter and drawer, but making books is just something that I've always done on the side. And it's a lot easier than it looks, and you can do it with just whatever you find around the house, really. So I'm gonna show you how to make two different kinds of books using pretty normal materials, computer paper, if you have any kind of nicer papers, Scotch tape, packing tape, needle and thread, ruler, scissors. I think that's it. All pretty straightforward. So the first book that I'm going to show you how to make today is a simple little accordion book with a nice cover. I put a little string on it so you can close it, and then you can see it opens up. So this is made out of printer paper for the inside, some nicer paper on the outside, and then this is just a piece of duct tape, and some packing tape on the inside to just strengthen this paper, and then just some thread. So the first step of this is to cut down your paper. So I used just regular printer paper, cut it in half this way. Each strip of paper like this is going to make 4 pages in your book, so you can decide how many pages you want and cut down as much paper as you like. And then when you have all your paper this size, you're just going to fold it very simply in half, and then fold it the other way in half again on both sides, like this. So you can just do this with your fingers, and you can use your nail to make a really strong crease. If you happen to have one around the house, or if you get really into making books and you want to invest in one, you can use a bone folder, which makes really sharp creases, but it's definitely not necessary if you don't have it. So now each piece of paper is going to be one little accordion like this. When you have the amount of accordions you want, you can just tape them together. That's what I did. If you really wanted to, or if you wanted to use both sides, you could use glue, but that also warps the paper a little bit. So I've just been using Scotch tape, and I take a piece of tape that's longer than the length of my page and put it on half of it, like so. So you can see it goes over both edges. And then I just connect the two pieces. And then you can just cut the edges off. So that way you'll make sure it's taped all the way top to bottom. So you'll do that as many times as you want until you have the amount of pages that you like. And you'll end up with a stack of pages, like so. So that's pretty simple. That's the book part. Those are the pages. Now, to make a cover, you can take whatever kind of paper you want, or if you have a drawing laying around, I happen to have this like fairly nice printed paper, but even if you don't, you can just use computer paper. And then my trick is that I coat the back with just packing tape, just normal packing tape, which will strengthen it. So even though it's just a piece of paper, it'll act more like a cover. So now you can take your pages and position them. So you're going to want your cover to be a little bit bigger than your pages. This piece of paper that I'm using right now is a little bit too small because that's what I happen to have, because I already used the real one for the good book. But you're going to put your book pages on top of your cover like this, and then cut around and make sure you have enough to do 2 sides. So once you have your paper cut down, you can just leave it too long for now, that's fine. And then you're just gonna fold the edge. So you can mark it off with a pencil So as you can see, I want like a little edge on the corner there so the cover can hang over, and then I'll mark right here with a pencil, and that's where I'll fold it. So I'll fold it once there, and then you can measure the height of your paper. We'll say 1 centimeter. So now I'm going to do 1 centimeter, mark that off on my cover as well. So now we have our one crease. Now you have a second, which is hard to see, but just imagine you can see the pencil right there, and you're going to crease it again. So now you can see I have a spine. And now you're just going to want to measure the size of your front, and that's about 71 millimeters. I always do this in millimeters because they're really small. It can, like, a little tiny bit can be really small, and it can be difficult in inches. So now that that's marked off, my 71 millimeters, I can just use my X-Acto knife, or if you don't have an X-Acto knife, you can use scissors to cut off that edge, and you have your cover. I'm gonna use the bone folder to make these creases stronger. If you're struggling to fold these because of the tape inside and you don't have a bone folder, you can also use like a pen or something round, and use that to just really strengthen that crease it on both sides. So now I have this cover. On my final project, I used a piece of duct tape on the front as well, just for decoration and also strength. This is time, if you have any kind of tape or anything that you want to glue on there, go for it. When you're ready, you're going to set it up so your page, your back page, will go in like this. And then I just used another piece of Scotch tape because glue is not going to stick to the tape on the inside. So I literally just used a piece of Scotch tape and taped that right in. Once again, letting the Scotch tape go over the edge and then cutting it down. So that way you get exactly to the edge. And there you go. Then if you want, you can go and take your needle and thread and just thread your thread through, make a little hole, tie it off on the other side. You can see this knot. And then that you can use to close your book. So accordion books are great, especially for artists, because you can read them like a little book, but you can also display them like this. So if you want to have a long ongoing narrative that you want to display on a shelf or something, you can see the whole book at once. Obviously, if you want to make it bigger, just cut your paper down bigger. The second kind of book that I'm going to show you is a stitch-bound book. You can see on the spine it's stitched there. This is a more traditional book format that you might be familiar with just pages. So this one, you also are just going to start with regular computer paper. This time, instead of cutting it this way, you'll cut it this way. And this, even easier, just fold in half. In my book, I put a couple pages of lined paper in there just to mix it up. You can obviously do any kind of paper you want. So you're gonna fold as many sheets as you would like until you have a stack like this. Then you're just gonna wanna put your stack together as cleanly as possible and open it up to the center. Now, I'm going to go through my ruler and mark off the center right in the spine. See if you can see what I'm doing. Here's where the very middle crease. I'm just going to put a mark in the center with my pencil. You're going to do 2 more marks in the middle of this and the middle of that. So about right here and about right here. So I'll just measure from the center to the edge And I'm gonna mark that off, and another 1 3/8 inches. So now I have 3 dots in the center of my page. Now, if you happen to be really into books and want to invest in this tool called an awl, it'll save you some time. It's just a pointy stick, basically. If you don't have one, you can absolutely use just a normal sewing needle. Any sewing needle will do. It'll just take a little more time. So with an awl, once I really get my pages all stacked nicely together, I can just use my awl to poke all the way through where I made my marks. Like I said, if you don't have an awl, if you have just a sewing needle, you may have to do it only a couple pages at a time. So maybe you'll be able to get 2 pages, and then you'll take those off and you'll have to draw your marks again, and you'll have to remark on every page. Definitely doable, just a little more time. Now all my pages have holes in them. And I'm going to look at my cover. So again, you can use anything for the cover. If you have any kind of heavier paper that's still foldable, any nice paper, if you have a drawing, if you have a photograph, if it's not super heavy, you might want to do the same thing and use your packing tape and just cover it on the inside with packing tape. And then this one's even more simple because we're not making a spine, we're just doing 1 crease. So you can put your sheets down and then use that to measure. You'll put your sheets down, and if your paper's not cut down already, just kind of draw lines around it, figure out how big you want to make it. You want it to overhang your pages, but remember the spine will be right in the spine. And then make your crease, and then cut down the other side to be equal. All right, and now you have your cover. On this book, I did 2 different pieces of paper as a cover, just because I thought it looked cool. So you can definitely do a bunch of different things. This is a piece of paper that I just found that used to be a shopping bag, and so I cut it up because I thought the shapes were cool. So once you have your cover, you're gonna mark it the same way. Mark it from the center, and then here you're not going to wanna, your other marks, you're not wanna do in half because this page is bigger than these pages. So you'll just measure from here to here and do the same amount here. So this was 1 3/8. So I'll do that again. Once again, if you have an awl, it's great. If you don't, it's totally fine too. Just depending on the thickness of your paper, you might need to push a little harder. Almost ready to go. Now, take your needle and thread. You actually don't need too much. You only need at least twice as long as the length of the spine of your book, and then a little extra to make a knot. This is special book thread, but if you don't have that, really any kind of thread will do. This is like particularly strong and threads really easily, but normal thread works just fine. So now you're gonna start sewing through the middle. So the first time through is a little bit hard. I'm gonna actually read all these because I didn't do it very hard the first time. So start through the center and you just sew like normal. So you might have to start out kind of 1 page at a time, just threading it on, or a couple chunks of pages at a time. And then you'll thread your cover on as well. So all just going through the center. And now you're going to come through your top hole, going back. You're going to loop around the top now, go back through that hole. And you can kind of keep it a little bit loose for these first couple stitches because it's just easier to navigate it through. Now back through the center And I'm sure you get the idea by now. Just stitching. So now we're going through this hole, going around the top again. And now once you've done most of your stitches, you can make sure everything's tight. Now you're left with this, and you're just gonna make a knot in the center. Double knot it, and then cut off the excess. And there you go. It's as easy as that. You can do the same thing. Take your needle, poke a hole, and put some threads through if you want to have it closable. You can crazy decorate it, do whatever you want. So yeah, there you go. So now that you've seen these techniques, I just want to show you a couple of books that I've made in the past, show you what you can do with them. It's a very simple little book with just a gray paper cover, quite fragile. And I made an accordion book in it. That opens this way, meant to display on a shelf. This is all just inkjet printed paper that I taped together. Actually, I glued this one. So you can print out your inkjet and then design your book on your computer, print it out, and then bind it after. This is another very simple accordion book that I made, which is just one long drawing, and then the cover and binding is all just duct tape. So it's just a regular drawing backed with duct tape so it has some stability, it can stand. It was actually part of a sculpture at one point. Here's one of my favorite books that I've made. This is stitch bound, and this I made out of just anything and everything I had around. So these are like old swatches from markers. You can see the same paper that I used on this book that I love. Some notes in here, some different kinds of paper. There's some drawings. I put a little bookmark in, just glued a piece of ribbon here and tied this to it. Yeah, so just anything I had around, I just stitched together into this book. So you can make them out of anything, and they look crazy. And I just want to thank the Pennsylvania Rural Art Alliance, the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts, and Spruce Arts for having me host this workshop. I had a lot of fun doing it, and I hope you learned something. If you make books, send me pictures. All right, have a good one.